Abe, I'm gonna start.
Yeah,
I'm gonna.
yes, my love.
Thank you. I've been wanting to call you my love.
Mhm.
I'm glad we're there finally. I'm glad we finally got
You
there.
got it, dude.
Oh, I've been asking,
You got it.
and I got it. Now we're
Well, you've
gonna.
been asking the wrong guy.
Now we're gonna edit
I'm
out.
all you needed to ask.
We're gonna edit out the 5 minutes of us upside down smooching, so we can get back to business.
Yeah.
Hey, so
I derailed your intro, didn't I?
Not really. Not really. I'm okay with
Okay.
what you're doing.
Okay,
Can
good.
I ask you just broad genre question about 2002's Spider-Man, which I know we want to talk about today?
Fuck.
I know you're ready for this.
No.
Yeah,
Are you
you're
sure?
ready.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're on it. Do you think this
Yeah,
is
what is it?
still a '90s movie?
Oh, yeah.
I think so too. I was watching it. I was like, this feels like a '90s
Yeah.
movie still.
Yeah, I'd say any decade, sometimes the first 3 years.
Absolutely.
It's
tails
also
off.
was there? Here's the thing. It's also movies to me always work with what was the last big thing in the genre to happen.
Absolutely.
You know, the fact that in 1999 The Matrix came
Yes, I
out
thought
and
the same thing.
action movies and
Yeah.
that is more of an indicator of what this movie's releasing into the wild, because
Correct.
people have seen that. Now, if for some weird reason The Matrix was made in 1995, this movie would probably feel more advanced, but we're on the timeline we're on, I guess. Does that answer your question? That's
does,
a great
yeah.
question.
I was thinking to myself about The Matrix the whole time I was watching this, because to me, The Matrix represents the end of the 90s. This is a turning point in what movies are that is sort of irreversible. Movies are there'll be a threshold where you can't not be influenced by The Matrix if you're going to make an action movie. And this movie has, it sort of defied that a little bit. There's some Matrix stuff in it, and some clear, some of the CGI, some of the shots are clearly influenced by the filmmaking there. But then there's stuff that feels like good old fashioned, even late 80s, 90s fanfare, right?
I mean, the stuff at school, we're still looking at school,
some of
honestly,
the
still looking
action
at school the
stuff.
80s.
Yeah, absolutely.
We still look and it's so funny because we have callbacks now. That it in terms of you think of Stranger Things and whatnot,
right?
It feels like the 90s. There's a brief time where we had I Know What You Did Last Summer and Scream and stuff. But outside of the horror genre, the concept of high school never got out of the 80s. It just didn't.
Yeah, dude. They got some 30-year-olds in this high school.
John Hughes just is nah, I got it.
Yeah.
No one else tried to do a goddamn thing.
That's right.
Even in the 90s, it was fucking Angus comes out or some shit. And it was just this still feels like you're doing Breakfast Club. I don't know. That's just me. That's just
I agree.
Opinion from this yak-yacker.
They all feel like they're reactionary to Breakfast Club. Because Breakfast Club, when you watch it, still feels pretty grounded in reality, even though it's very 80s and the culture is different. It still feels like it's a grounded movie. It felt real, quote unquote. And I feel like a lot of the 90s high school movies feel like they're parodying what they saw in Breakfast Club. This one is no exception because half the people in this school are either in a Gap commercial or part of NSYNC. You know what I mean? They're all in these bright colors with these stupid haircuts and they're all 45.
Oh yeah.
They're all so old.
You're absolutely you're so right about the Gap commercial. They are it's
bad.
That baby blue shirt, sweater,
the plaid
vest that he wears and stuff.
Yellow and orange and shit.
Fuck me up, dude. Yeah.
It really did. They had
everyone's got
they had a Macy Gray concert.
Dean Cain in their locker.
Oh, there's so much Dean Cain. So much.
So
there was
much
a Macy
Dean
Gray
Cain in all these
concert
lockers.
That it really flipped me out. It was
it flipped you out. It's something.
She was performing under a Singular Wireless sign, and I was like, okay, gotta stop the movie, find out what happened to Singular Wireless. I need to know.
Yes.
I need to know what happened to
the
Singular.
The same thing that happened to Macy Gray.
Yeah. Purchased by AT&T.
I'm sure. It's fine. But it is weird because
Yeah.
it's like they when they punch out room in the movie to be like, and now Macy Gray, like, and it's like, yeah, and we're all excited, right? And because like I'm like watching the
What
movie,
kind
and I'm
of
like,
excited?
they're me,
Yeah.
they're me, and they're
I'm
excited.
there. Yeah.
And like
Oh.
so, it's just weird that when you take that much time, that means she really had star power. Everyone was like,
That's right.
it was the summer.
She was a
Macy
big
Gray,
deal. I mean, she is
2002.
she's a legendary act, I would say. I don't think that's weird.
Mhm.
I do think also a 90s thing that is really bad in the late 90s. Like I feel like culture got absorbed by corporations in the late 90s in a weird way.
Oh yeah.
The soda product placements are really bad. There's a Dr. Pepper one where he's like learning how to shoot his web that's like, bro, that is really
Hell
offensive. Yeah. What are you doing? Working in the background of a scene, for fuck's sake.
Because we've always known that Spider-Man and capitalism, they go hand in hand.
I mean, for real, bro. It's
just one of those things in the comics. Like, you have to be a comic head.
That's true.
Know.
Yeah, to know that Dr. Pepper's always been the web power brand of Spider-Man. I've been watching some late 90s Seinfeld episodes, like after Larry David left, and the show gets much, much worse.
Uh-huh.
And one of the indicators of that is there's always soda product placement, and they have shows about products that are just like, there's no fucking way that would have happened if Larry David was there. No way it would have happened.
Yeah. That's
yeah, it's real bad.
What a time to be alive.
It's a weird, like the late 90s, early 2000s is a weird pivotal moment in pop culture where everything that was punk and reactionary about the early 90s gets totally Disneyfied, and into that pops the first live action Spider-Man movie in years and years and years, right? Like, when was did they ever do a live action Spider-Man before this?
I don't think so. Maybe. I don't know. Not one that is like, I'm sure there is, and someone is like, but Abe.
In 1978,
I don't know.
bro.
Yeah. 1978, bro.
Yeah.
I'm sure it was fine, but it didn't
matter.
Start a cultural revolution.
Right. And that's
not like Spider-Man.
This movie did. It started a cultural revolution. That is absolutely accurate.
It's an X-Men. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Like, that's kind of wild when you think back on it, because I remember being excited and seeing it in the theater and stuff, but I don't remember it feeling like it was important. But now in hindsight, of course it is. Right?
Yeah, it's 2000 X-Men, 2002
Spider-Man.
Spider-Man.
Yeah.
Sandwiching 9/11, just like you'd expect.
Just like I would expect.
Just a nice little 9/11 sandwich for you.
Yeah.
That's superhero movies.
God, I wish you were talking about that today in this episode. But I know you're not going to do that.
This is like, I mean, it is New York film made in 2001/2. I think they had already filmed a lot of this shit.
I'm sure they did.
Any of that went down.
Yeah.
So the shots of New York are of a previous time.
If I remember correctly, and I did not look into this because I didn't think we were going to talk about it, but if I remember correctly, they might have had to redo some stuff to tone down the damage to New York City because of 9/11. Or
sounds about right.
I don't remember if that's true.
I didn't look into it either.
Yeah. What I want to get to off the
because that's
rails.
not what I wanted to talk about.
Well, what did you want to talk about
man.
in this episode of Directorpiece Theater?
Well, yeah, I'm Abe Epperson,
Yeah, you
and
are.
I have a theory.
Ooh.
So I've been watching Spider-Man on loop for about a month.
Sure.
And I decided that, you know what? When you think about camera, Sam Raimi, the director, really does some subtle stuff with like showing Tobey Maguire the actor. Like,
I love that you're bothering to say that.
Yeah.
I love
like
it.
he's there, and Tobey Maguire's there, and there's a camera there, and he's like, all right, you're Peter now. All right, you're Spider-Man now. You know what I mean? That's like how acting goes. You know how movies work, right?
I do.
You understand movies?
I do know that. I would say, just as an observation that I think will help what your theory is, I do think that Tobey...
This is my theory.
I do think that Tobey Maguire understood the tone of the movie better than anybody else did.
Yeah,
he's in tone with what this movie's supposed to feel like.
God, the tone is incredible. Because oh my God,
Yes,
I totally forgot that it starts out the fucking voiceover to start it off.
Yeah,
he's playing it so fucking cool. He's like, "You want to hear a story? Do you really want to hear my
You don't
story?"
want to.
Like he's like, I'm a bad boy. I'm like, Tobey Maguire, bad boy. Let's go. Yeah, no, it's the tone. He does get the tone. He really does.
Yeah.
Because it's like, it's what he is. It's like playful and kind of vanilla and wholesome. Just like Tom Holland. It's Spider-Man. But also, it's kind of got the unhingedness of Sam Raimi, where he's just like, haha, yeah, let's fucking just do some weird shit. Like, let's get real weird with it. And I think embracing the weird was one of the smartest things that this movie does. Like, casting Willem Dafoe. What a remarkable, inspired kind of decision. What had he done before that justifies that,
I mean, he's such a great actor that I don't think it's weird for him to be cast in literally anything.
Yeah, that's true. Like, everyone kind of...
Yeah, he's awesome.
But he says something. He brings a certain air to the project.
Absolutely.
And he has a wheelhouse. It's not like he has range, but it's usually like intense dramas and such, at this point in his career.
He can get weird and abstract, but he's never been as ungrounded in a movie that I can think of as he is in this one. Like this movie, and he's playing a cartoon, which I've never seen him do in a different movie. And I'm talking, I love The Lighthouse. I mean, where he's like this fucking nightmare Captain Ahab, but he still feels like a real person in that. Right?
Yeah.
He doesn't in this movie. We agree on that, right?
Oh, well, yeah.
Yeah.
He's unhinged. His first shot of him full goblin, that smile is like...
What?
Haunts my dreams. It's like, this is what I imagine when I think of a demon. Like, I'm pretty sure he's the Death Note demon. Do you know the Death Note demon?
I do.
That's Willem Dafoe, I'm pretty sure.
I do. I feel a little bit like Dafoe... I mean, this is all speculation. I feel like Dafoe was told to sort of play up the movie villainness of it. I think it actually robs it of its intensity on purpose. To me,
obvious.
Yeah.
Like, you can throw a rock into the internet and you're going to hit a think piece that is like, the goofiness of Spider-Man is what allowed us to make Spider-Man, like superhero movies. And they're right about that.
Sure.
But I don't really want to talk about that.
Oh, forgive me.
Because I'm a big old nerd.
Yeah. Let's do nerd shit.
We'll talk about what you want to talk about, but I'm just saying, like, it's not inspired thought to me at this point to be like Spider-Man's goofiness is really what allowed Sam Raimi to. It's like what allowed us all to laugh at and at the same time take seriously the concept of superheroes. But I think that there's something that we forget about this, and that's kind of the main goal of the show in my mind always, which is if you look even in movies that are not considered art films or whatnot, or the type of films where you go like, yes, that shot has symbolism, or something like that. Maybe you're doing that, stroking your beard in your den.
I try to.
I don't know.
That's why you have it. Yeah. That's why you get a beard, to stroke it.
I think this podcast is mainly kind of hopefully kind of a testament to the little spots of artifice that we see in movies you don't really expect, and I feel like Spider-Man that's true of. And so mainly this is going to cover the first half of Spider-Man, and it's not about his transitions or his editing or his style. That's all good stuff. We just talked about that with our Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness podcast and stuff.
Indeed.
That's his main deal as a director. Most people who know Raimi know all that stuff. That's all fine and good, but I just want to talk about something even more simple, which is just how he frames people. And in this film, it's obviously important how he frames Peter and how he frames Spider-Man, because the whole first half of the movie is the coming to terms of that synthesis, right? So if you follow me, the camera works differently depending on who we're looking at. And any comic book fan will tell you that like Peter is stunted, he's oppressed by the way of the world, and Spider-Man is kind of like free without limitations of where you can go. So it makes sense that this would determine Raimi's kind of choices for how he shoots the film. Turns out it does. And in this case, I basically just want to focus on how framing and shot selection really dictates how we see Tobey Maguire's performance. And this, I mean, how close is the camera? How wide is the lens? Is the camera moving? And what's in frame? Those 4 questions bring us to some thoughts, I think.
I just want to comment a loving comment on my pal here. I love that you're tossing out all of the normal Raimi stuff. We're not going to talk about all the normal Raimi stuff. Stuff that you and I would both eat for lunch every day if we could. Fair enough.
Oh, it's wonderful stuff. I just think that there's been so many podcasts that have said that. There's been so many, and it's like available for your eyes. Like, not that this stuff isn't, but it's just so well known. Like, think of the Raimi board and like it zooming in, or like the, you know, insane crossfades that make the transitions to almost a sequence of its own. Like, these Raimi trademarks are awesome for sure.
I will say, out of all the movies that he's ever made, this is one of the movies they work the best in. All the Raimi stuff works really well in this movie.
It does.
Yeah. It's a good movie for him in terms of directing. Absolutely.
I think that it works the best when it's like, who gives a fuck? So that's why I loved horror. That's why I love it in Drag Me to Hell. I love it in Evil Dead 2. But this does feel like it has a place that kind of comes out of comic books. Not it's like his style is what comic books are or anything like that. It's just like, it's just having fun with the medium. And
Agreed.
Comic books are well known for just like, all right, what if, you know, the edges of frame aren't even the edges of frame? Let's just really revision how this shit is happening. Comic places have always been known for that kind of, you know, that kind of stuff, that inspiration.
Absolutely.
But here, let's just take the transparent, small approach of the first 2 shots of Peter, right? So over his narration, which is a whole thing, we reveal his hand slapping the window of a school bus that he's late for, right? So his hand is like literally in a box. And then it cuts to him running beside a bus, and the frame is a shot of his reflection in the rearview mirror of the bus. A box. It's a box. So it's not.
So he's in boxes.
Yeah. So you know where he's in boxes. Peter sees the world in boxes. He's a photographer. We see him within. There's a little scene in between with Willem Dafoe and James Franco where we start to get their whole deal. And he's when we cut back to Peter, he's on his trip. He's looking at spiders with his class, right? We all remember the sequence.
Of course.
And he's a photographer, as we know. And so Raimi does this thing where we see the way he sees the world by including several shots where he aims his camera, like when he's getting bullied, and then later when he's looking at Mary Jane. She's also framed inside the camera, like within the camera. And we'll notice that also in the boxes when we are noticing this is the first 5 minutes of the movie, by the way.
Yes.
The spiders in the lab in the second sequence, they pay emphasis on the fact that they're in boxes.
Right.
We shoot through the box at one point. It dollies across to show the dimensions of the box. Mary Jane is standing there, infatuated with the boxes, looking, pointing, touching the boxes, kind of stuff. And this is all still also happening when we go home with them. A little later in the sequence, later in the next sequence, Mary Jane is being watched by Peter because they are next door neighbors, and he's looking in her windows for the first time.
Yep.
You realize that they're neighbors. she's kind of locked in a window as well. So this is all pretty simple stuff, but it's just like that's what kind of started me going like, what's going on?
You say
here?
it's simple. You say it's simple, and yet I feel like an uneducated film audience probably doesn't realize how often this trick is employed in movies to create this meaning.
It's often, it's often, or like bars to imply prison, which is something also Raimi does.
If you go back to The Graduate, which is like a movie that filmmakers often talk about for its great filmmaking. There's a fish tank box in a box thing that's going on all the time in that movie. Or, of course, American Beauty with the prison thing that you said. There's a lot of that stuff. There's a tradition of this trope, actually.
And what does it mean? It can mean anything, as you mentioned, it depending on the film. In this film, though, specifically with Mary Jane and Peter's, like, look at their houses. There's one shot.
They're insane. They're insane houses.
That's like, a little less than 30 minutes into the movie. And it shows one house on the left, one house on the right, bisected symmetrically in the frame. And they're like the most skinny homes you've ever seen. They're like, I don't know how to describe it other than like skinny, like you'd expect from like a Tim Burton movie.
They're crazy.
Or Barry Sonnenfeld. Like they seem uncomfortably spaced as well. There's too much space between them, and this feels like it's by design. And then you start thinking, what does that perhaps mean? Well, maybe these homes were chosen to emphasize the like stranglehold their previous lives has on them, and how oppressive like the world is around them. Then the boxes theory starts to kind of make sense, right?
They're almost like
because
coffins.
It's like,
I mean, really.
Everyone's stuck in this like oppressive space, and that is always a good thing to do to your protagonist or protagonists right before you let them out of the box. So I'll definitely I'll say that there's a juxtaposition that occurs later with the wide open skylines of Spider-Man's world, right?
Absolutely.
But I want to keep walking kind of chronologically through the movie. But
sure.
Stop me at any point if you have.
No, my only thought is that first of all, the houses have to have been designed that way because you would never pick them by accident.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, it's just those houses are such a loud image because they're silly and
they don't exist.
Well, they feel like, and they're also sort of like book matched almost. You know, like they're parallel journeys. Obviously, a thing he's clearly doing with Mary Jane in terms of the coloring they're employing and stuff. Like, there's a clear parallelism that's being done here. And I like the reason I find this fascinating is because Raimi does a lot of loud choices, you know. So it's interesting that he's also doing this more subtextual filmmaking stuff too. Because most of the time when I see loud filmmaking, the subtext stuff it's replacing that, right? It's trying to bring all the subtext forward.
Yeah, it's just saying or I want you to feel the anxiety, whatever I'm saying, I want you to feel it, like Train Spotting or something like that. I want you to feel like what it feels like to get high and what it feels like to come down. And I'm going to do that with camera through stylistic approach.
Right. Whereas when
stuff like that always occurs.
His flashy stuff is almost like, you might say, like Scorsese's flashy stuff, which is to say sort of just how he sees movies in general. Like, it's not always like he knows how to dial it down, but the fact that he's employing this whole other subtextual methodology tells me that his loud choices are not necessarily as much about communicating the deeper subtextual meaning as much as they are, this is how a movie goes to him. Is that a wild statement, do you think?
I think so.
Okay.
I don't think so. Because you also can tell, like, the proof is in the pudding in that it's on all of his movies, with the exception of, some
Simple
things
Plan.
like, a Simple Plan. Like, he infuses himself into every movie he makes, or at least what he allows himself tonally, because sometimes tonally it's not a great fit, so he's like, maybe I'll only do it once, but he would do it a million times if he felt it was justified.
100%. Anyway, I just wanted to make that comment because it stood out to me when I read through your argument the first time. I was like, most people don't do this for that reason. Anyway, please continue, sir.
Yeah, so now I want to jump a little bit to camera distance, and I guess more importantly, camera lens.
Oh yeah, we love those lenses.
I want to look at the scene where, like, kind of going back to like the Peter's bits by the spider scene. Uh, there's this thing that it is really subtle at first, and that's usually not how it goes. Usually, directors want to make their postcard statement first. They want to say, "Here's my protagonist in their spot." Like in act 1 before they answer the call, like here's them exactly, this is what their problem is, or this is how the world sees them, or how they see themselves. So here it is loudly, my visual strategy to remark it. This movie is a little set different because it doesn't do that, which at first made me think maybe he's not doing this at all, but because of like the theory at all. But based off the stuff he does later, I realized that this actually, it still works. And not only that, like it's setting it up subtly. He doesn't want to do this loudly, but ultimately what he's doing with like camera lensing at this point in the movie is that Peter, as in just Peter Parker, is always more wide angled than everyone else. And he's closer to camera initially than everyone else. This makes him the focal point, which is something a lot of directors do with their protagonist anyway. But because it's like, well, the world, we want to see the world through their eyes, so we shoot wide to them because the world reflects back at them with their wideness. Like that is kind of how we shoot wide angles with protagonists. But in like, so like the shots of what he sees will be large and wide, but then shots of him will be wide, like wide still, but very small in this like claustrophobic thing that we're setting up. Like the world is looking back at him and it's a bit claustrophobic. That to me is saying that like that's just a metaphor for Peter. He's bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, looking at the world with big eyes. The world is a little too close for him, a little too oppressive for him. And this is something that we're noticing in just the camera lens choices that he's making early.
Yeah.
Now this becomes scripture until Uncle Ben dies, which is like the act 2 break
and late,
and like 45 minutes in the movie.
It's late in this movie.
A little bit late. Yeah, because it kind of act 3 is kind of there, and it's like Aunt May gets abducted, and then it's just like, all right, you gotta go.
Yeah, that's it.
Green Goblin's gotta go.
You
it's
gotta
over.
Fall, Goblin. Yeah.
Yeah, and so like that's a lot of what we're talking about, and it's mostly noticeable through when you see what happens later. He's more telephoto, and camera's a little bit more distance. That's just how you shoot Spider-Man.
It's interesting.
Before I go into that,
you say that because that's also not very typical of movies, even now, which would have kind of returned to more of a close wide angle approach in the last like 5-10 years. Because like I would say this movie predates all those telephoto things that we were doing, in the early to mid to late 2000s. Like there's a lot of telephoto stuff.
Yeah.
And
I mean, there's just a lot of boring filmmaking, to be honest.
That's true. But like, I'm trying to think, like, have I seen this approach in another movie? And the only movie that came to mind is like the Iñárritu films, like The Revenant, or Birdman. And that's because he got married to, it's one camera angle the whole time. So the close-ups have to be this close. But you don't really see it anywhere else, right? Like, it's not a commonly done thing to get that close with these wide angle lenses, right?
Yeah, you see it in stuff like I think there's some lensing stuff that Gerwig did in Lady Bird.
Oh, interesting. I remember that being a lot of mid lenses.
And you noticed that?
If I'm wrong, but I only saw it once.
It's mid lenses, but for Lady Bird, it chooses its moments to be up close and personal.
Interesting.
And by that, it's small camera distance, wide angle lens.
I like it as a tactic.
And then it becomes about anyway.
No. I like it as a tactic. You don't see it in movies that much. I think it's fun to like point out, hey, people don't do this much. So that's kind of cool.
Yeah. Point is, it's kind of in any case usually reserved for filmmakers who are trying to do something with camera.
Right. Exactly.
Which is not something that you'd say that like Sam Raimi does as much. And I think this is, what's coming out of this is that it's like, oh yeah, we forget that Sam Raimi was like a Coen Brothers collaborator. Like he came from the same kind of system that like preached this stuff. He just chose he wanted to go his own way with like Evil Dead, and it really like made a stance in terms of his career as like I'm gonna be a guy who's I'm kind of a wild man was what I think. Maybe for better or for worse, that's what he was presented as.
I'm a wild man. Yeah. That
Yeah,
sounds true.
but like he's still very tempered. It's very tempered, you know? Like it's not just a shot of like I don't know, an eye going into someone's mouth, you know? Like
it's not stupid.
There's so many
Yeah.
Yeah.
His zany camera stuff is not stupid. Like meaning it's not it's not for the sake of. You know, like I like picking on this director sometimes, I guess, so I don't want to sound like an asshole, but I feel like sometimes like
Right.
Tarantino might do stuff that's like flashy for the sake of, you know, whereas I don't really get that feeling from Raimi as much, even in a movie like this where he's doing a lot of flashy shit, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, it's also I mean, I have a lot of statements on that, but like
Okay.
if your goal is trying to be cool, it's a little different from just saying my goal is to be, I don't know, like make this sequence move or something like that. Like that's very specific. Sometimes I feel like Tarantino might choose his shots because it's like that's a cool looking shot, which you know what,
That's not a
he's
bad
right
thing,
about.
yeah.
But it's not bad to just be cool. But if that's your master, what is cool? Cool is a hard thing to define, you know? It's defined by, I guess, what you think is cool. So
True.
we're watching movies that like Tarantino likes. I guess that's a definition of any director. But at the same time, you definitely feel it because it feels like it moves at its own pace, whatever it wants to do. I like movies that like you can deconstruct and say, "Oh, there's a strategy here." And I'm not saying Tarantino doesn't have strategy.
He has strategy,
it's just
but
like what motivates his ad hoc kind of. Here's how I'm gonna just go.
right.
Like, if just left to my own devices, here's the kind of shots that I'm gonna come up with.
Maybe we'll
And that kind of instinct is what we're talking about.
Agreed. Maybe we'll go back and watch like something like Jackie Brown, which was less of a well-regarded Tarantino film, and see what he does with movies that are not the big zeitgeist films, because he's got a few. Even his Grindhouse movie, to see if he's doing stuff like this, and we're just not catching it. Because frankly, I mean, not surprised because that sounds condescending. I'm appreciating the fact that Raimi is so intentional with these little details. But forgive me, I feel like I'm derailing you. Please continue, sir.
Yeah, it's not your fault. Tarantino has the tendency to derail any conversation. In the next sequence, we get like kind of what he's doing. He's doing this with all his protagonists he's doing this with all of his main characters because he's kind of showing what the world is like before Spider-Man even arrives.
Right,
and we see that in the initial shots of Norman Osborn / Willem Dafoe. Not as much when he's talking to his son in the car, which is just kind of normal shots, to be honest. We do see when he is in his element of like he's at work.
right.
His work is equally as oppressive as the houses that Mary Jane and Peter Parker live. Before he's the Green Goblin, the shots place him claustrophobically against the wall, being overtaken by a mass of like army generals asking him questions, berating him about schedules and like, you know, quality of his work. Behind him is the pod he later bursts out of, which is just to note. I mean, it's like you shoot it in the space, but it's like when we think about staging as well and what's in frame, doing stuff like, well, the cage that he's building is behind him is a signal to us to say, you know, this is also, he is himself in a cage before he bursts out of it, before he becomes a big little goblin dude. So to juxtapose against that, Peter Parker obviously then right before becoming Spider-Man, when we look at the strategy, we just never see him wide. That's the kind of big thing that, like, to me, when I was watching, I was like, that's interesting. Because usually you
mean like a head to toe?
A wide shot in the element, head to toe. Yeah. Peter Parker doesn't exist in wide.
Interesting.
And he becomes Spider-Man pretty quickly, within the first 20 minutes. In terms of, like, physically, he's bitten and then he falls asleep and he wakes up. His shot is never larger than, like, a medium wide, like a cowboy shot. We see him in close-up and medium close-up. And that's a great way to kind of like dolly in and dolly out of those shots. That's what Raimi does. But he never really shows the wide shot. And I think in the introduction of Peter, Mary Jane, Norman, and even Harriet to some extent, which is James Franco, Raimi seems like he's showing his tortured characters in these enclosed spaces, but also the wide telephoto choices seem to be governed by each of them moving out of their shelves. So the reason that this theory starts to like piece together is that once they change, the lens changes. Like, so I'm assuming, look, I know this was shot on like 35 millimeters. So I'd argue that the lens choices, like just to give it a name, of like what we showed in the singles of these characters at the beginning of the movie were like 20s and 24s, like pretty wide. But then later we're at like 35s and 40s when we get a single. You know, it's just like, here's a close up of Peter. Like, think of those shots. Mm-hmm. Here's a shot of Norman. So you can see kind of, and what that lens does to, like that difference of lens choice really does to the image of the film is that you can kind of see the slightly blurred background. The backgrounds are more involved in the composition in a wide because you see more of the world outside. It's just how the lensing works. In lenses, or in wider lenses, which are the smaller numbers I gave, the space of the character kind of opens up. But telephoto lenses, the larger numbers, that same space is kind of compressed.
Right.
And the last thing I want to kind of talk about in terms of like the bag of tricks that he's got is that the first doll. So once Peter Parker's bit, falls asleep, wakes up, and now he's Spider-Man. We get the scene with the glasses and stuff. When he wakes up and he like his head pivots and camera kind of like cants with him, the first dolly push back of Peter Parker is when he wakes up as Spider-Man. And I'm going to touch on that in a second about when Sam Raimi dollies in and when he dollies out. But right before that, I just wanted to mention that he's doing the thing again with the glasses in that scene. He sees the world through a glass. This is obviously obvious to any comic book reader. It's obviously especially poignant in this movie by the fact that he moves them up and down into frame, like literally on the camera lens. So boxes and boxes, they're no longer useful. So that's where it's starting to evolve. It's trying to say the boxes aren't needed. That's the first signal that we get, is that when he wakes up and he's now Spider-Man, the lenses are changing, the motion of the camera is changing, and now we're starting to get an evolution of this boxes and boxes thing, where he's like, get rid of these boxes.
Right, because the spider power doesn't have to make him good at seeing things. You know what I mean? Like, he doesn't have to get better at seeing at all. Like, that doesn't need to be a part of it.
I mean, it makes sense. It makes sense. I mean, when we get when we get Spidey sense, and that's just written in the comic book, so it's
sure.
It doesn't matter. But like Spidey sense sequence where it's like it moves from like, you know, when he goes to school for like that day. It goes anywhere in the room. It focuses on small details like a mosquito or someone firing a spitball through straw. Right. This is the idea of Spider-Man obviously opening up the world. And now is kind of when I want to mention the dolly back stuff, because there's a sequence that happens with Peter. So just think of a close-up shot of Peter that becomes slightly wider. It happens several times in the movie. It's exclusively, these are beats where it's like, Peter's activating his inner Spider-Man, because we get a montage pretty soon here where it's like what does it mean to be Spider-Man? I'm gonna try to like web all around, and you know, like, so anytime it's like Peter is activating his inner Spider-Man or he must step up and make a choice, it's like the call, you know, approaching him. That's what happens. Like when that is like the context of the scene. The dolly back means that he's answering it.
Yeah, he kind of
so far dollying in has kind of been
yeah.
It pulls back. Spider-Man is always a pull back, but we noticed it if we look at just the first 15 of the minutes of the movie. The Peter game is that's always dollying in. It's again the oppression of the world coming at Peter. The dolly back means Spider-Man can fight back. Everything. The world is opening up to him. So I don't think it's it's like no mistake in the comic book and in the film. As soon as Peter tries to assume controls of his powers, that he goes outside to like rooftops and such. So that is also obvious in terms of when you look at the shots, the closed space of shots that exist in Peter's life have now become kind of this open space, which is the New York skyline. The next sequence we really get is the wrestling ring, which, just real quickly, that becomes a Rage in the Cage.
Yes.
And it's like, obviously, box him in, baby. Give me those bars as the background. We talked about this. Imprison this motherfucker.
Also, give me more Macho Man.
And
can't get enough Macho Man, baby. He's killing it in this movie. Right?
Bonesaw is indeed
But
ready.
it's also like, it could have just been Macho Man. It doesn't really matter. I just, I loved him so much.
Wait, so in 2002's Spider-Man, you just like, what if we just took a little... We didn't care about what's going on with Peter. Let's just go around with Macho Man with
just let him be Macho Man. Just let him be Macho Man. Let him do his cream bit. You know what I mean?
Oh, you're saying don't be Bonesaw.
Yeah, don't be Bonesaw.
But he's basically. But he's doing.
There was not one single.
Right?
Oh yeah! If that's the key ingredient to get Macho Man is, oh yeah, we need that. We didn't get it. And it's fine. It's not ruining the movie or anything. I just, when I know it's Macho Man, give me Macho Man.
I heard an ooh.
I mean, it's probably growling. Maybe you gave it when we were watching it. That's fair.
That's
right.
fair.
Can I say that when I watched this part, I was like, this is fucking really well made. Like, the wrestling stuff is really good. Like there's weird POVs. That sequence
is really directed.
Yeah. But they
here's
work.
The thing. That sequence is kind of like what also made me think about this. Because like when Peter walks up to the ring, we get really claustrophobic close-ups of Peter, like almost just his eyes. And then it cuts to the widest they can get in the space of like the audience and everything, the lights. Like in terms of the editorial strategy, it's clear that he walks into this cage match as Peter and he exits as Spider-Man, right? So
yeah.
Obviously, the action's really motivated and punchy, in terms of the cage match. The set and the extra is fantastic. It feels appropriately sized event for what makes the story work. While it's large enough to make it feel like there's excitement from the crowd. And it's got these bookended short series of shots that say at the beginning, Peter enters the ring. The world is oppressively large. Wide shots cut to jarring close-ups of Peter's eyes, wide to close. And then Peter wins, or Spider-Man wins. He realizes he wins, and we get the close-up shot of his face, realizing that the crowd loves him, cut to the wide of the crowd. So that's close to wide. So wide to close as he enters, close to wide as he exits. It's like this little wrap and unwrap. It's like an editorial ribbon of shots saying, he can fight. His world just got a lot larger, That's cool. I think that is intentional because of the way in which it was edited and the way it kind of... It's the same thing with the dolly in, dolly back. What does it mean? So, yeah. Then we get the sequence where he gets money from his winnings, and the bookie gets robbed. And there's two things I just want to point out. Peter sidesteps to allow the robber to get into like a box partition of frame, leading to the idea of obeying the system that's fucked him so often. The boxes. Go ahead and go into the box, all things in their box, that's totally what Peter does to allow this shit to happen. And obviously, ultimately, Uncle Ben dies. And then we get a closest shot we ever get camera-wise to Peter. And his smile grows on his face. He's like, yeah, I did justice, right? Yeah. And the camera is wide and uncomfortably close. It's actually kind of like a jarring shot, if you remember.
Yeah, it had shades of emo Spider-Man from Spider-Man 3. It was like, I don't know.
He's like, yes. Because in his head, this moment means justice. But in the eyes of this system, this visual system, he's the farthest he's ever been from being free. So, of course, it would be marked by all the things I'm talking about. Inside a box, camera's way too close to him. The shot is almost oppressively cropping his face, and then of course we cut to dead Ben. So it's kind of the all is lost moment for Peter that inspires the openness of the Spider-Mans. And so this marks the beginning of the Spider-Man Peter Parker kind of amalgam. And he's now synthesized once he goes through his grief period. Now the movie kind of displays qualities of both, because at different times when he's flirting or whatnot with like Mary Jane, sometimes he's Peter, sometimes he's Spider-Man, but ultimately he's more Spider-Man than Peter at this point. But it doesn't express itself necessarily as one scene as clearly as it does with like the cage match. And so we'll see a lot of hallmarks of both approaches depending on the moment for the rest of the film. There's no clear winner, I guess is what I'm saying, because it's not like two sides vying for control of like Peter Parker's identity. I mean, it is kind of in the comic book, but it's less so than something like Venom. You know, like,
absolutely.
It's more of a transformation that happens in Act 1. It's like it's boxes and then it's freedom, then boxes, then freedom, and so on and on and on. It's because those are two parts of Peter, not because he is now only Spider-Man. It's not like Spider-Man 1.
Well, there's a lot of threads to start following after the act break. Like the story kind of blasts open into several threads, like the descent of Norman Osborn and his son dating MJ,
Exactly.
and MJ's wanting to find an identity for herself, and Spider-Man's relationship with Aunt May. You have to do enough work that matters, and so it stops being as focused, which makes it harder to do this camera work, I think.
Yeah, it's you can't. That's why I don't think it's as clear as of a system to everyone, because he did it because he knew instinctively, I think it was right, but
Absolutely.
He didn't need to make room for it. He didn't need to be like, well, that we need to close that system. We need to take that visual strategy that I created as Sam Raimi and like take it home. He doesn't ever really do that. So this is more of just like me reading into his instincts.
That's interesting.
But yeah, then we get the first sequence after Ben dies, when Spider-Man chases down the murder. We see him attach a wall, and then something interesting happens. We get the first time that we get like Spider-Man camera, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because then he starts, or he's oriented strangely in space, because cameras, you're looking at the wall and you're not quite sure. He's kind of on a rooftop, but what is up, what is down, because that's how you shoot Spider-Man. And the camera dollies back always with Spider-Man camera. It's always on a compound shot that leads to another compound shot. And by compound shot, I mean like it dollies back, and it like will like pan over and will reveal a new kind of composition of frame, and then it'll do another thing and reveal a new composition of frame. So it's multiple axes firing at all cylinders, and a compound shot is more of just like I go from one place to another, which takes me to another. So this is totally different from what we saw before. Suddenly the camera's this flying entity that kind of motivates his moves before he acts, and the world is not only opening up to him, it's drawing our eyes to where he can go, which is literally anywhere, because he's Spider-Man. So Raimi leads us by dolly, by pan, by tilt to the next place in Spider-Cam mode. And this is totally different than everything before it, because everything before it has always been something happens and then Peter moves to it. Like he is always behind in the movement. There's a stagnant lack of movement before Ben dies. After Ben dies and he starts chasing this guy, like the camera just operates on a different level. It says, I'm going to move and you're going to follow. And I thought that was interesting. And then we get mostly for the next like 30, 40 minutes, Green Goblin's developed stuff that you mentioned, stuff like that. Peter becomes a photographer for the Daily Bugle. We don't really follow a system here because it's not about, these sequences aren't about Peter and Spider-Man at odds. It's about this new threat, the Green Goblin. So the emphasis is less important in these bits because the drama doesn't surround his inner struggle until Act 3. And then we get a sequence in like right before Act 3, which is the upside down kiss scene. And that's around like 70% into the movie.
It's also probably the most important moment in a Marvel movie. Just, I'm not kidding. I think it is.
It's very iconic.
It matters.
It's been parodied enough times.
It absolutely matters. And it's an image that only a Marvel movie could make. You know what I mean? Like it's such a
Yeah.
I think that's the genius of it, is that like it's your standard romance in the rain thing, a thing we love in movies, but it's a version of it that only a Marvel superhero could do.
But it's cool because the orientation is
Yeah.
weird, and that's what we all notice, and that is very Spider-Man. It's very Spider-Man.
It's the spider.
That is very
and a man.
Spider-Man. Because he's literally breaking the convention of the frame, right?
Right.
Like, it's a simple thing, obvious to anyone, but the fact that he opens up the edges of the frame with his orientation is something that filmmakers have done in the past. Like, how do you imply a world larger than the frame itself? You kind of crop it in a way that makes the audience focus on where else it could go. Think of the Star Wars Star Destroyer shot in A New Hope, the first image. And you go, oh shit, this ship is big, man. How do you get there? Well, you do it by an abstraction of space, by implying that it's endless and it's colossal in its amount of like how long it can keep going. And that is how you imply something, by implying larger than the frame. In Spider-Man, this is basically like the moment where he's going like, I can show you the world, you know, like it's him saying like, I can do upside down if you need. The fact that he's cropped in a strange way implies to us audience that you're like, okay, this is where really Spider-Man really can break convention in a strange way.
I think that a lot of times also movies now would be more interested in seeing like the entire shot of it, like the entire action that's happening, so you'd see like more of a full,
we get a wider shot.
And I think Raimi is right here that the intimacy of it is what matters. So like the fact that it's basically in a medium close to shot is actually more important than seeing how it works, you know. And I think if you showed it a wide, it would be it'd be dumb,
worse.
Or not dumb. It would rob the intimacy of it, because it's an intimate moment. Like Danny Elfman is doing a nice job of like giving us, you know, movie kiss magic. Like it's working here.
Yeah.
And I think
little smooches with the violin.
Yeah, but I think that you're right that the popping into frame aspect of it, which is how he enters that frame, he slides into it pretty quickly, is part of it's part of what made it extraordinary, because the frame can't contain Spider-Man anymore. And I think that it did trigger in us when we're watching it. Like I remember thinking that this time before I read your argument. It's the same effect.
It's almost always the potential.
Yes.
It shows that he has a unique perspective by using the potential of like what's outside the frame. I know it's stupid as like it's about the notes that you don't play, but it is that though.
By having Spider-Man able to defy the limitations of a frame, right? And as you said, the filmmaker has so clearly defined Peter Parker's limitations by the frame that the fact that the frame can't contain Spider-Man becomes really exciting, you know. And it's used for both impact, like sort of like like the impressive part of it, impact, and it's used for comedy effect here, but also in other movies like Hot Fuzz and a lot of Edgar Wright's films. He'll use like what's outside of the frame to both reinforce, like peek it in. Like it's funny where the hand is coming from.
Scott Pilgrim when he jumps out the window. Hot Fuzz,
Cake?
where you know the Andes come back in frame.
Yeah, and like it's used for comic effect, but it also does exactly the same thing, which is to say it reinforces how contained the protagonist normally is by a frame. You know,
right? Something that we take for granted.
We just
is kind of the fun of it.
That's right. The filmmaker understands this is an arbitrary limitation. Anyway, love it. Love what you're up to here.
And so let's look at the Thanksgiving as like to kind of take this thought home, which is that Peter, and if you remember the scenes, probably most people do, because this is like a crazy
this weird studio apartment.
Peter arrives home late and has to go up on the ceiling because he's worried about the blood dripping on Willem Dafoe, who has also, I assume,
the ketchup blood, that bright red gooey ketchup blood.
Oh yeah, the gooey spider blood.
Yeah, he does.
You know, his blood is different.
It really is.
and then he escapes Norman Osborn's like little investigation, like when he's like, I think I sense someone's here, and then he goes and looks out at the balcony. and we get a shot where Spider-Man's upside down on the scaffolding outside. And so these two shots where Spider-Man is basically, he's just wherever he wants to be because he's a fucking spider. Camera doesn't know up or down. It mixes the right side up in the shot. This is the key part. Mixes right side up. It always takes us from, Willem Dafoe.
Yeah, he's right side
Spider-Man.
up. Yeah, and then pull out.
Spider-Man's vantage is upside. Yeah, exactly.
Right.
So it's like an Escher painting. Like if I thought of what it actually made me think of is Labyrinth.
Yep.
In the dream sequences, like with David Bowie is Spider-Man and Jennifer Connelly is Willem Dafoe.
Okay.
This is kind of what I mean when I say Spider-Man's world is open, right? It's not just the dolly back shots or the swinging sequences that imply space. It's also Spider-Man's geography and how it's different than everyone else's. I think everyone kind of intuitively notices this because they go, he's right side up, or the frame makes it seem like he's upside down. He can be anywhere on anything. And if you've seen a lot of movies have done this. If you've seen Ender's Game, I just watched that recently. It's pretty good.
Yeah, years ago.
They have a similar revelation about that. They actually script out that space has like no up or down. And we kind of see hints of that in Raimi's approach to Spider-Man. There is no up, there is no down.
But only for him.
So basically,
only for Spider-Man.
Only for him.
Which is great.
It's always got to be a reveal. It's always got to be, here's what the world looks like. Now here's what Spider-Man's world looks like. Because once again, the formula is dollying back. Wider. We get wider. Ultimately, my thought is that Raimi shoots the two sides of Spider-Man with this kind of intention of separating the worlds, right? And I think good directors build systems that dictate the cinematic approach of their characters. And it says, look at this person in this certain way. It governs our judgment of like those people in particular by subtly framing our perspective of how we see them. It's kind of like the invisible hand of directing, but it should never be overlooked. If you like that kind of thing, just look no further than the first 30 or 40 minutes of any film. Directors will tell you exactly how they see their characters by how they introduce them.
Yep.
Either we see something like a sweeping wide, they're apart from their environment, or we see an intimate close-up. This is all about their choices. Or we see a short frame. Their eyes are closed to the world. There's so many ways you can do it and so many different meanings you can extrapolate from it. But the shot does matter, and the result may be subjective, but the governance of what occupies the canvas ought to show you how these people's worlds ought to be seen, not just kind of journey along with them. And this is what Sam Raimi does in the first hour of Spider-Man.
It's one of your great themes in this podcast to sort of break down motif introductions in first acts. I don't know why it never occurs to me to do that, because you're really good at it. And you're right. I mean, those are interesting motifs that he does get away from them, but it's clear that he was trying them,
It's clear he was trying with them, and he instinctively followed some rules, even if he didn't set up those rules in a way that are when you watch back the film, you go, oh, and that's the shot where the rule breaks. Or he does even have those, though. He has that moment where it's all right, Spider-Man wakes up. Dolly's now go back. It's that is, whether or not he went out to seek that's what I'm seeing on screen. So that's what I'm picking up.
And I think what I like about Raimi is how instinctive of a filmmaker he seems to be. You know what I mean? And I don't know what his know what his writing or direct or his shot listing process is at all. So maybe he's extremely calculated and deliberative, and that could be true. But when I watch his films, I get this sort of gleeful, instinctive, gunslinger kind of vibe from how he shoots stuff. So it's fun how it still congeals, right? Because that's what the artist is. The artist is the part of you that in the back of your brain is putting things together, putting meaning together that maybe even the conscious you doesn't know you're doing, and maybe he planned all this. He could have, and I would still think it was great, but there's a part of me thinks maybe he didn't. And I love that if that's true. Right?
Yeah, it's kind of definitely, well, I mean, it's definitely what he's perceived as like this instinctual kind of, like we said, I think I said wild man earlier, you know,
Right.
like he definitely has this vibe of like, let's just get that shot and that shot and that shot. But and it's the fact that he works with the Coen brothers like early in his career, and like they were great friends and probably thought a lot of similar thoughts about filmmaking. I can't speak to the nature of their, you know, like collaborations and such, but especially because these guys in particular are, there's not a lot of info on them. They don't like to let
they don't want to let you in.
They don't like to let people like press in on the joke, you know, like, so I don't know. He may be very deliberately,
He could be
making those vibe of instinct, and he just like passing it off as, you know, like, this is just what I want to, this is the type of films I want to make. I think Tim Burton is he's a lot more meticulous, I would say, because of the art design sense in his worlds. But when you look at like Tim Burton's camera, he also feels very instinctual.
Certainly with camera, less with design, obviously, but with camera, I agree.
Exactly.
But also, like, I think there's something to be said for artists sort of appreciating the person they're not. Like, for instance, like Kubrick and Spielberg were close friends, which anybody who's like a big film buff knows that. Like, they used to like call each other and just talk on the phone. A thing that just sounds amazing to me. Like, what were those phone calls like? But anyway, part of the reason they were so enamored of each other as friends is that they were like on opposite sides of a continuum in a sense. Like, you know, Kubrick never had a big blockbuster hit and made a lot of movies that were challenging and sometimes like either critically well received but not beloved by audiences, or vice versa, right? And Spielberg was the guy who had a Midas touch, you know, and so they kind of admired each other for those opposite reasons.
The difference.
Yeah, and like, honestly, when I watch a Coen Brothers movie, I do feel like they're antithetical to Sam Raimi's movies in a lot of ways. You know, and neither of them are better or worse, like, per se. They're just different approaches. But maybe you're right. Maybe they are rubbing off on each other in a sense. Because then you watch something like Simple Plan and you're like, oh, so Raimi can do this like really contained slow burn thing too. He just doesn't want to.
It's kind of a running joke that he's like, I wanted to make Fargo, so here's my Fargo.
It's very good too.
And
it's a
like,
good movie.
That like, as a joke, I don't think it's true, but like as a joke, you think immediately, like, is that coming from some form of insecurity from Raimi or something like that? Like, I can make those types of movies, you know, I'm better than any of you.
Or a demand for them.
But maybe it's not that.
Yeah.
Or, you know, he's just like, I think that's just how the story needed to be told, is it didn't need me getting in the way with the way I usually tell my movies. But it's like, then why not leave that to other directors? So it's this kind of paradoxical format where it's like he is both that type of thing, and he's also like reactionary to that kind of thing. That's what makes Sam Raimi, I think, so interesting, is that at times he is truly unhinged. Like, the ideas he has are sometimes outlandish. I love Spider-Man 2's sequence where Doc Ock like goes to town on like all of the lab assistants and doctors that are like trying to find out what's going on with his arms. And it's like, wow, it's just like, you are in your own category of filmmaker. Like, you do your own thing, and we all can see it. And that's usually about like the thing I said we weren't really going to talk about on this particular, but now that the theory is over,
let's talk.
Sam Raimi very much so has the stylistic approach of like he's a singular voice. He like, you just think of like, all I think about all the time with Sam Raimi is, to me, the perfect image is just that eyeball horizontally traversing through space and then just going right in the mouth, just going right there. And it's just, that is an unhinged thought, and it's a perfect way to shoot that. There's so many different ways to shoot it, but that's Sam Raimi's way of shooting it. And that is, I think, probably his main, that's his trademark. It's his main thing. That's why I think he's instinctual, but it's cool to see these kind of like invisible choices.
The invisible ones are fascinating because in a way they're either more intentional, or completely unintentional. They're one or the other. I know I've kind of argued both in this episode.
Right, that I agree. Yeah,
Like,
it feels paradoxical because you can see both being true.
I could see
But
both
at
of
the
them being
same
true.
time, one of them betrays the other theory because I mean, it's what makes good art good art. It's like it seems like they're contradictory, but the synthesis is perfect. You know, I don't know. That's how I perceive
totally
it.
agree. Yeah, I'm just so fascinated by how we landed on him for Spider-Man at all. Like, I mean, we could get it. I don't want to get.
Here's 140 million.
Well, and like Sam Raimi is such an off-brand filmmaker in some ways, right? Like you look at all of his films before Spider-Man, and they're all sort of quirky, offbeat movies. Even the bigger ones are quirky, offbeat movies. And not that he's a bad director; he's a great director. I like his work a lot. I look up to his work a lot, and I like how stylish and inventive he can be, and his gunslinger vibe. I like that too. But it's funny that all congealed into Spider-Man, which is like ultimately one of the most important films in the last 20, 30 years. Like not because of how good it is, although it is good, but because of what it means for the industry. You know, it's huge.
Right. And when you look at like your Evil Dead 2s, your Darkman's,
Quick and the Dead,
the Dead, and then you look at his that he did that, and that's like him up until like 1995, right? And then just looking over his filmography,
it's weird after that.
Then it goes A Simple Plan, For Love of the Game, which is the baseball one.
That's a weird one for him.
The baseball.
Yeah.
And the gift, which is
I've never seen that, but I know what it is. That's a weird movie too.
Right. Yeah, it's about psychic experiences. And it's a horror film, but it's more reserved than, like an Evil Dead or an Army of Darkness, of course. Then it was Spider-Man. And I just think that's interesting just because it's like 3 in a row prove that he's like, I can listen to a studio.
Yeah, maybe that's what it is.
Because I can do something that is antithetical to, or not antithetical, I keep using that word like they're at odds, but much like Spider-Man and Peter Parker are an amalgam, he's showing that he can be reserved in the way that I think that a lot like a Marvel or like a big blockbuster would expect someone
he also didn't write.
You wouldn't be also considered for Spider-Man if he didn't do The Quick and the Dead, The Army of Darkness, there is that element of him being unhinged in this still.
Oh, he's still him. Like you're never going to get away from it unless he decides to get away from it. But a movie like this, it's like you shouldn't. He also, I think this matters in like, and I haven't studied up on this, but he didn't write any of those movies. So like maybe that in that sense, he became more of a malleable part of the filmmaking process in the studio's eyes because he didn't need to be an auteur.
That's true. Yeah. He would. Yeah,
I don't know. Who knows?
That's true. After the last thing that he, the last thing that he wrote and directed was before this was 92, which is Army of Darkness, and the next time that he wrote and directed was Spider-Man 3. So it was like there is like 15 years
it's a long time
where he was just director.
Yeah. I mean, that's a really long time. I love him as a mainstay of this industry because he is the ultimate indie filmmaker and also the ultimate studio filmmaker. He's sort of done both. It's great, you know?
That's why it feels antithetical, but it's in the end, it's just Raimi, baby. And I think there's a lot of filmmakers who kind of have that weird synthesis that makes like the magic. Like Jordan Peele is exactly good for the reasons that we got invested in him early.
Totally.
When we're like, you're a sketch comedian who does impressions of Obama.
Right.
And then you're also like this very, very good thoughtful, like essayist. Yeah. And it's like, okay, so both of those things don't work, only because we've never seen it before. And then he steps into that role and he's like, ta-da. And the same thing is true with, in terms of there's always going to be an iteration within that era of auteurs. I got corrected on my pronunciation of auteur.
You send them to me. You send that person to me. I will verbally punch their faces off.
I think that, you get your Spielbergs and you get your like Lucases and such, who are always built to be outside of a system, and that became so big that they became a system on their own. Of course, you're going to have a little later than that someone who would be able to play on both sides, play Iron Man football, so to speak.
Right.
Like you get a Raimi out of, that's just how the universe works. You're going to spit out a Raimi because it's going to be like, well, what did you need to be in order to be like to make the 90s and early 2000s work for your career? Well, I needed to make a mark early. So I had to be like run and gun and like entirely all style and very little substance in terms of what like studio films are looking for. But I'm just going to do my own thing. And then they're like, all right, well, now that you're famous, these are the films that you can make. And this is what we're starved for. And he's like, well, I will go to work and I will whistle while I do it, sir. I think that there's both of those. There's two wolves inside us, Adam.
Only two.
You know what I'm saying?
Yes, we're a pack of two in our hearts.
There's two wolves inside us.
Well,
I think you know what
of course
I'm
I do.
He's a mix of the two.
Well stated, sir. I enjoyed this theory very much. It's fun to speculate. It's fun to see what directors do, but also to speculate the level to which they plan or just instinctively accomplish this stuff. Either way, I mean, you can't deny the man is an artist. He's still doing it, and he's doing it at a high level.
He's doing it at a high level. And I thought this was like kind of a cool thing for him.
I do
because
too.
He usually doesn't do it. So I was like, all right, I got to go back and rewatch a bunch of stuff and like not focus on the flashy Raimi bits and look at the other stuff.
It's fun to see past that.
Was he always this way?
Yeah. It's fun to see past that.
I'm eager to see.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm going to watch 1985's Crime
I'd kind of
Wave.
like to see that too. I don't think I have seen it, so I'm intrigued by that. Well, friend.
Well, thanks for listening.
My pleasure. Anytime. And hey, guys, if you enjoyed this podcast and somehow you haven't thrown a couple of bucks to patreon.com/smallbeans, but you want to, if all those ingredients are true, congratulations. That's a recipe for join on up, and you can hear more exclusive podcasts, including special episode of Frame Rate. I'll show you mine if you show me yours. A bunch of other really cool podcasts, even our new Multiverse podcast with me and the Aber.
Yeah, we got some exclusives going on. We got Star Trek Next Futurama, we got Spielboys, and we got Escape from the Multicurse, which is our new show featuring both of these guys, where we talk about our current dilemma in movie making and in pop culture of the concept of the multiverse or parallel worlds, why we're so infatuated with that in the last 20 years, it seems. And kind of like just like what's going on.
What's up with that?
What's up with that?
What's up with that?
So if you want to hear those podcasts, you can only hear those podcasts if you do Patreon. So please do that. I got nothing.
I
Thanks
don't either.
for listening.
Guess that means that's it.
All right.
This has been a Small Beans endeavor. We're a bunch of pals who make podcasts, sketches, music, web series, and movies. The beans always have new ideas percolating, so make sure to check us out at patreon.com/smallbeans. That's patreon.com/smallbeans, where you can browse all of our current and past content, see what we've got planned in the future, and learn how your support can help the small beans grow into huge, giant monster beans. If you enjoyed this content module, please like, rate, subscribe, or tell a friend about us. We love you!